Welcome to today's episode of On the Rocks. Today as our guest, we have Chris Summers, the CEO of Burgex. Chris has evolved at Burgex from senior analyst to leading the company through its initial growth stage as CFO to now leading as CEO. Prior to Burgex, Chris spent time at Rio Tinto and was among those responsible for the valuation of some of the world's largest known mineral deposits. Today you'll hear us chat about the importance of an often overlooked mineral class, aggregates. They're one of the most consumed minerals and also one that is dramatically impacted by NIMBYism, or not in my backyard, which is a really important discussion because aggregates are so critical to construction and urban development, and their proximity to construction has such an impact on their carbon footprint. I'm excited for you to hear about Mineralocity as well, Burgex's digital aggregate mapping solution, as well as what Chris and Burgex are doing to reach out to students and young people about our industry. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to support On the Rocks, please don't forget to click follow in your podcast app and leave us a review. It really helps. With that, pour a glass or a cup or a mug of your favorite drink, and let's dive in. Well, Chris, thanks so much for joining me on the Rocks today. What are you drinking today?
I decided to go local, so Emily, I'm here in Salt Lake City, and just up the hill from us is Park City, and there's the High West Distillery up there. I'm drinking their bourbon blend today. How about yourself?
Today I've got Four Roses, a classic. I know a lot of folks are probably familiar with that. It was a gift from my friend Pippa Song, so if she's listening, a shout out to Pippa, who's
very now
more about the mining industry this year. That was one of her goals, so she and I have been having a lot of conversations about mining investing. So perfect fit podcast.
Fantastic. Yeah. A lot to learn, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I think that's where it's great when folks make a point of wanting to learn about the industry first before they kind of jump all in, as I'm sure you'd agree, because there's so much technical information and different aspects of risk in the industry.
Yeah. Look, we kind of run on three main pillars. One of them being education, right? We need to educate the community, the kids. We're doing a lot of fourth grade stuff right now with kids with the Utah Mining Association.
Wow,
so that's fun.
That is getting in that early.
Yeah. We figure get in early and then just the general public as well, get them educated on how important the industry is, really.
No, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I say there's got to be a way to get more of the industry into elementary school, because her friends at her age group, they all love rocks and stones and digging everything up, right? And then somehow we sort of tend to lose that, I think, as kids start to maybe study more about like biology and chemistry as they go through school, and keeping them excited about geology and engineering and what we do in the industry is so important. And they do love it. Like, they enjoy the material, right?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, rocks are cool, right?
And it's absolutely, especially when they like smash them, it's like breaking rocks up, dissolving them and stuff. And and we talk a lot about the dinosaur record and how you understand that based off of geology. That always gets a lot of them going anytime the dinosaurs get involved.
Yeah, I've got a little granddaughter that she's so into dinosaurs right now. It's amazing. It's like one of her favorite words now. She just looks around and says, dinosaur.
Like, it's like the fact that they can remember all of the different dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I don't even know how they get that.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's a great way to kind of open it up with. I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit of, what you do, but really your why, because you guys have a really great why you're in the business and what you're doing.
Yeah, look, I've been in the business for a while and really became passionate about it as a kid, again, with rocks. Right?
Yeah.
And loved it. And then I also had this thing where I was also very conscious about human impact on nature in our environment, right? So it turns out that I ended up in the right business because our why is kind of this, is we believe in a stronger, more sustainable future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to achieve that, we use education, advocacy, and supporting responsible mining exploration projects to bring that about. So that's really why we're here. There's so many stories and so many people just take it for granted that the things they consume on a daily basis are just there, right? And the other piece of it is really being more kind of North American. We're U.S., so U.S. Independent, right? We've becoming more and more of an issue, and we're passionate about it. So it's education from the kids up through, the old timers like me, helping people understand just how important it is.
Yeah, and I think that's actually it's a global theme as much as that sounds funny to focus on the local sources of
Right.
minerals and that, right? We're kind of seeing that globally, at least
Yeah.
communities becoming more aware of where material comes from and what that means for their local environment or reliance on global trends for sure. And I think one thing that I find really unique is what you talk about when it comes to aggregates and how that played in because, in reality, it's probably other than, finished metal products, it's probably like the mineral resource or material that people interact with the most on a daily to day basis, right? But probably don't think about as being mined.
Yeah. It's kind of the off the mining into part that's off to the side, right? It doesn't get talked about much. It doesn't get recognized, but it is by far and away the most mined materials and the most consumed materials in the world.
Yeah.
You can go back to ancient days and in the pyramids and even ancient Rome, and every civilization is really dependent on rocks to to whether it be transportation or housing, shelter, whatever it might be, tools. Uh, Rocks have been more important than just about anything else. So we do focus quite a bit on construction aggregates. About half of our business is focused on aggregates, and it's vital to help people understand how important it is.
And for our listeners who might not be familiar, I should have asked you too. Can you just explain kind of what aggregate is and how it's used? Because I should assume that everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, so construction aggregate is primarily crushed stone, sand, and gravel.
Mhm.
Um, it can be then next steps are into cements, asphalt, ready mix, and so on. It's really the basic building materials. So whether it be roads, buildings, schools, airports, sewer systems, um, anything we drive or walk on really or use as shelter is very aggregate dependent. So those are the three main categories: crushed stone, sand, and gravel.
And how, like, if you were to compare aggregate to other minerals, like, how is it different when you're doing mapping and exploration and development of an
And,
aggregate resource from a, gold or copper or something like that?
and and there's a lot of similarities, but there's definitely differences as well. Aggregates, the process is quite simple, generally
Mhm.
speaking. Make little rocks out of big rocks, right? That's
Yeah.
really what it is. But the geology is important, right? Not just any rock will work for DOT, Department of Transportation
Mhm.
specs for roads or whatever it be, or make good cement. There's different tests that everything goes through, and you still, yes, you still have to find a resource. It's not
Mhm.
everywhere. You have to test it up and prove it out, and so it's still locate, drill, study, and then again, if it's crushed stone, it's drill, blast, load, crush, very similar to traditional metals mining. So sand and gravel, obviously a little bit different. You don't have the blast factor, and a lot of that's done with loaders and or dredges in areas
Mhm.
with water. Yep.
And is it the same from like a permitting and environmental concern standpoint? Go through a very similar process when you're assessing, like you said, any
Yeah.
environmental impact or human impact?
Yeah, very much so. Very
Hmm.
much so. Every operation goes through the same screening for endangered species,
Hmm.
as far as water interactions with water. Um, so yeah, it's the same process. It's, no matter if it's metals mining or aggregate, it's similar impact
Oh,
on nature.
interesting.
Um,
I honestly would have thought that there would be, I don't know why I thought this, but I would have thought that there would be kind of like a lower standard because I just think of it as so much more ubiquitous and kind of that's good. The same.
yeah. The only thing
Yeah.
you don't really run into is issues with leaching and so
Mm.
on that might happen, right? So, but as far as impacting the environment, it's very similar. It's held to a high standard as well.
And so what led you all to put mineralocity together? And maybe you could explain a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, mineralosity has kind of been our project for years. What it is, is it's an online tool where we've mapped over 7,300 construction aggregate producers across the 48 contiguous U.S. states. Not only have we mapped them, but we brought in geology, we brought in things like the property itself, parcel data. We have a good understanding of where something could get permitted, where it might not be able to get permitted. So it really brings all these factors together and says, where's a good place for greenfield development?
Right.
And so on. Also very useful for M&A. We do a lot of market analysis and so on. So that's basically the genesis of it is we use GIS to do our market analytics for our clients. Aggregate is a different beast. The biggest difference is obviously the value from most minerals, right? I mean, you're talking $10 to $20 a ton versus, thousands an ounce. So,
Right.
so the biggest factor is location
Right.
and transportation because it costs so much to move such low value material. And that's
Right.
where mineralogity came from, was trying to figure out how in the world to source these big construction projects with construction materials without, having to truck it too far away. So that's where it started, and now it's out there for anybody who wants to see it. It's pretty awesome. And we're in the process of mapping out some of the existing other mines as well, other minerals.
Well,
So
it's a really cool tool, and of course, running prospector, I love anything that shows resources
love
on
it.
apps and stuff. Yeah, and so I wonder, and that makes so much sense because the closer to home to a large construction project, you can get that material, the lower cost, but also the lower you lower the environmental footprint, right? I mean, if you're using
Absolutely.
less transportation essentially to move that volume of material. So, do, does that resonate with communities, or do you have some of the same not in my backyard problems that other types of mining groups have with aggregate, or do folks want it close by?
No, nobody wants it close to
I mean,
them. The biggest factor is noise, right? Blasting and so
yeah.
on, and the dust.
Mm.
People don't want the dust, and I'll use Salt Lake City as an example. That's where I'm from. For example, Granite Construction, one of the large aggregate producers and construction companies, is trying to get quarry permitted up what's called Parley's Canyon here. It's the canyon you take from Salt Lake City up to Park City,
Mm.
and there's fierce opposition.
Right.
Um, and the problem is it's a perfect location from an environmental standpoint in that it's just a perfect hub. It's right off Interstate 80 and can feed Salt Lake Valley very well. And the story about Salt Lake is this: we have some good geology and some good aggregate production, but a lot of our resources here are coming to end of life. They're being
Right.
depleted rapidly. Salt Lake is this big net importer of population right now. It's going crazy, and we need aggregate desperately.
Right.
But permitting and the NIMBY folks make it very difficult for it to happen. I'm all about responsibility, responsible mining, and doing the right thing. And part of the right thing is that you touched on is from an environmental standpoint. Aggregate's heavy and trucks are noisy and burn a lot of fuel, a lot of emissions. And so the farther away these resources are that are being mined from actual construction projects, um, the worse the carbon footprint is. So and not only that, but wear and tear on the roads is significant.
Right.
Have to get out there and pave more and so on. So really it's about reducing the carbon footprint
Mhm.
and reducing construction costs. I mean, I don't know about there in Florida, but the prices over the past 5 years have more than doubled for homes. It's really hard to afford when a lot of the issue is the construction materials are getting so
Yep.
expensive.
And so, where do you think that comes from? The NIMBYism? Is it a lack of understanding, or is it just like, yeah, I want all those great things. I want to lower the carbon footprint. I just don't want to have dust and noise in
So
my area. Is that really what it kind of comes down to?
yeah, I think so. And again, that goes back to education, right? I
Yeah.
think people just take things like aggregate for granted.
Mhm.
We don't understand how much of it we need and that it's a finite resource.
Yeah.
So it is, we can't move geology. It is where it is. And,
Yeah.
Wish we could, and there's some
Right.
good stuff going on as far as recycling goes. Really good. We've got a client that's big into recycling aggregate right now. It's fantastic, and we're helping them find markets for it. And there's some synthetic stuff and so on. And the good thing is there's clean cement, kiln-free cement coming out that's going to be really helpful for the environment as well. But back to NIMBYism, it's yeah, people just don't want it in their backyard. They want to have the comforts that it brings, but not see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does, as you're educating people about how it can be done responsibly and mitigate that as much as possible, what does right look like with an aggregate project? Like when you are doing as much as possible to reduce noise and dust, like what should somebody be looking for to say like, okay, it may not be exactly what I want, but excuse me, but this is a really well run project. They're doing everything they can to mitigate the
Mhm.
impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's like traditional mining as well. I mean, having, good water dust suppression systems
Mm.
is really important. Bag houses and so on to keep dust down. But outside of that, it's really difficult because there is drill blast. It is noisy and it is
It's a
messy.
quieter. You
Yeah,
can't
right.
blow stuff up quietly or yeah.
Right. And the plants are noisy, right? You get huge crushers that
Right, right.
are crushing rock, and it's just it's noisy. But to do it right is basically to ensure, right, you're not impacting any near water sources,
Right.
right? There's no discharge. Hopefully fenced and really similar as any mining, right? It's just minimize your impact, minimize the impact on the surroundings. So yeah,
No, that's yeah, I find it such a challenge because to me, mines and processing plants are really cool.
yeah,
So like I can certainly empathize with folks who don't want to live next door to one for the reasons you highlighted, but it's like I just I wish more people saw all those episodes of Mr. Rogers when he would do like tours of
right,
processing plants and stuff. I think part of it is we've almost lost a fascination with how stuff is made and where
yeah,
it comes from in general, right? And appreciating really how amazing it is that we as a human species have figured out how to like pull rock out of the ground, crush it up, and do all this crazy stuff to it to make it into what we use every day, right? I mean, that
right, yeah.
again, going back to kids, like kids find that fascinating, I mean,
Oh
that can
man,
balance
it's
it
amazing.
out. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I totally geek out like in plants and so on. I'd be like, wow,
yeah,
imagine this, seeing a float circuit or something like that,
yeah,
and just picturing in your mind the processes and the details and the technology, everything. I mean, as you're talking about NIMBYism, right? I'm looking out my window now and I see Rio Tinto's Kennecott, Bingham
mhm,
Canyon,
yeah,
massive. It's a copper mine that can fit, and I see it right here, and we can coexist, right? We've proven it
yeah,
here. Metro mining is possible, right?
right,
It can happen. And luckily, this Bingham Canyon's been mined for 100 and pushing 120 years now.
yeah,
Uh, so it's not going anywhere, right? So, but it's a great example. If we could help people understand that, yeah, there's some dust and so on and so forth and big machinery, but it's possible and it's very efficient operation.
yeah. We it's almost like we've got to get folks from where like everybody drank Jack Daniel's whiskey,
Yeah,
and now everybody wants micro.
right,
Like,
right, right.
right, like,
Yeah,
micro beer, like, let's get almost hyper local with it and understand where the stuff is coming from in your community and embrace that, right? Embrace
thing.
kind of the more tangible manufacturing side of what it takes to do. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how the liquor companies and the breweries managed it, but they made breweries cool, right? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And in coffee shops, right?
yeah, same. Yeah, exactly. Same thing. Yeah, made it an experience. So maybe we need like really good breweries inside of the mining.
Yeah.
Co-
I don't know, Emily. It reminds me of when I was in Mongolia when I was working for Rio Tinto,
Okay.
very early stage of Oyu Tolgoi.
Like,
And it was amazing. They had in the camp, they had a bar. It was
oh,
open only for a couple hours, right?
mm,
A day. But all the Chinese and Mongolians that were working there would always hit the bar and grab a bunch of 6-packs of beer and then stack them on their table so they could get stocked up. And I don't know if
Right.
we need that going on in mining
No. Totally
operations.
counter to safety culture,
Yeah.
absolutely. But,
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll
It was an interesting setup.
yeah, tell me a little bit about that because you've also been part of some of the biggest projects globally. You must have some great stories.
Yeah. So what I did, a lot of the work I did for Rio Tinto was on the business analysis side. So
Hmm.
what we did is I did a lot of valuation work on whether it be new potential mining operations or expansion scenarios. I'd spent a lot of time in front of the investment committees
Hmm.
talking about where we should be allocating capital.
Mm.
So I was a big part of Oyu Tolgoi in the very early stages when we
Hmm.
were negotiating with Ivanhoe on that one. But I've also done valuation work on Resolution, for
Hmm.
example, a lot of scenario analysis at Bingham Canyon, Eagle Line, which is kind of ramping down now, which reminds me of another great story, which is in Minnesota with nickel, right? That needs some attention as well. They're facing a battle there, but it's so vital. It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Midnight in Idaho, it's so important. It's amazing that it is so difficult to get the message across because
Yeah.
people like you and me we get it.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk a lot about that on the podcast, but also, anytime I'm at conferences and, I mean, you and I bump into each other at them all over the world and stuff. I do, I'm joking, of course, about the bar at the
Of
mining
course,
site.
of course.
Like, but we've got to figure out a way to get out of our bubble, right? Where
Mhm.
everybody gets it and pull people into our world and go out more into the non-mining world because I do think we've got to get past just kind of lecturing people that if it can't be grown, it must be mined. Like,
I,
right? I mean, it is more about that. Hey, like if you're a community and you're supporting a critical mineral or any type of mineral development project, by supporting that, what are you helping to bring into the world and making possible? Right? That bigger story of what we're doing. And I think it's certainly something I know you and I are both passionate about. But
yeah,
it is hard because it's like where do you how do you message it? How do you get it out there?
yeah. How do you? I mean, people need to kind of taste it and feel it, right?
Yeah.
Really, really understand it, and that's one of the things we're trying to do. It's just the audience is so big and diverse. What's the
Yeah.
message, right?
Yeah.
How the message vert to a financial investor in versus a farmer versus a teenager versus it's just such a diverse audience. It's like how do you
Yeah.
focus the message? I mean, take your whiskey example. That's a small audience, right?
Yeah.
They could focus on whiskey drinkers.
Right.
Trying to focus on all of humanity and trying to make it work, and it's hard.
But I think that's where somebody pointed out to me that, the oil and gas industry has a better perception
Right.
globally, or, people perceive that as being better than mining globally. And why is that? And they made the point that because most people put gas in their car at least once a week,
Mhm.
right? There's a very tangible reminder of, okay, there are these risks, there are these negative, it's an extractive industry, so it has risks and everything, but here's what it allows me to do. It allows
Yeah.
me to take my kids to school and go to my job and go to the grocery store, right? And I think that's the part where, yeah, making people, like you said, feel more connected to it somehow, which again is why you would think like something like aggregate, people should get that. You think they'd understand.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's hard to make that connection.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. But I think we're up to the challenge. It's
Yeah.
good. Take some time, and I think the other part about it is just the history of mining. Right? We didn't
Mhm.
know a lot back in the day
Sure.
about how we were impacting the environment and so on, and we've learned a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the big messages we need to get across is now with technology we have, you know, it would be impossible to run a mine without doing it responsibly now, at least in the
Right.
U.S. In the U.S. Right? Um, and that message needs to come across. This isn't the 1920s
Yeah.
or even the 50s and so on, right? This is 2023. We know what we're talking about now. We know
Yeah.
we've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy into developing technologies where we really can minimize the impact.
And I also think that the gap that I try to talk about with folks is the perception of who is in the industry as well. We're
We,
relating person to person. I mean, I studied geology because I love to be outside.
yeah,
Right. I mean, that's why, that's what led me from, I don't know why I thought I wanted to be a physics major, but that did not. I was like, oh, no, thank you. So, it was like, or I could be outside running around, in my case, on the coast of Maine, playing
yeah,
and looking at rocks, right? And incorporating things like biology and chemistry and physics into everything I do. And most folks that work in geology and mining are passionate about the outdoors,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
I think that's the other part that might surprise most folks is like, yeah, we really value outdoor spaces and protecting the environment because that's part of what drew us into the industry.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's a very good point. I mean, some of the most passionate people I know are about the environment are in the industry. We love it.
Yeah,
We do. We were, like you said, it drove us to the career. So another point I think we need to think about is who's spreading the message, right?
mhm.
I think for a long time, miners and large mining companies have been just kind of quiet because they
Yeah,
figure they have a very low profile, then there's been little risk of
I get it.
anything. Yeah, but now we need the people of the industry that's used to being just quiet and
Right,
just quietly go about our thing. Now we need them to speak up. Right
right.
now we need them to join the rest of us, as little guys,
Mhm.
into getting the right message across. And it's hard. I mean, there's all the talk of ESG and everything like that, which is all fantastic stuff. But the fundamental need for the industry needs to be talked about more. And they've got a big voice. Let's use it.
Yeah, and it's a great story. That's the other thing that I say, like, anybody who's ever been to like a mining industry event or cocktail party, I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you, we've got some characters, we've got we've got a lot of adventures, right? I mean, as an industry, we work all over the world in some of the most unique places on the planet and locally, doing really cool stuff, a lot of which is cutting edge. And so we've got great stories to tell. And I personally, I think you and I agree on this. A big part of what I think is, we just have to tell the story. Don't just quote stats and figures, right? People don't connect with that, but tell the story, get people out who are good storytellers as
Right.
well.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, we don't need to preach. That's
Yeah.
not what people are looking for. Absolutely. And that's the other side of it is this scares me is so what if we can ramp up mineral production in the US, right? Who's going to do it? Because
Yeah.
right now there's no the numbers of mining engineers are dropping. And I heard the stat. I'm not sure of it, but I was told that in 2022, all of Australia graduated 4 mining
Yeah.
engineers.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
That, I just don't know how. And that's why we're working with fourth graders now with the Utah Mining Association is to try to just stimulate some of that early on, right? That
Yeah.
it's I mean, mining is one of the best paying industries out there. I mean, it's fantastic.
But that's,
And
but people have to wait until they have a degree in order to really find that out, right?
yeah,
It's that earlier age, right? That people start talking with their parents in middle school, right?
yeah,
About what they want to do, what kind of classes they want to take in high school, and where they want to go to school or vocational school, right? Even
yeah,
to work in the industry in various ways. So yeah, it's got to be like you said, fourth grade. I
yeah.
think that's on. Yeah, and for folks who maybe are like, why is that so important that Australia only graduated four? For folks who don't know, Australia is one of the largest
Right, right,
countries
absolutely.
in the world. So I wonder how many we graduated here in the U.S. Actually, I
Yeah,
wonder if
I'd
any.
like to. That'd be an
Out.
interesting stat. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Because again, even when it comes to NIMBYism, the point I try to talk about with folks is if we don't do it in our country where we do have stringent permitting, environmental, social standards, it pushes it to countries that have less structure and lower ability to enforce those responsible mining principles.
Yeah,
Um, so if you are outside of just your own kind of neighborhood concerns, if you're concerned about the world as a whole with things like environmental degradation, deforestation, child labor, conflict funding through mineral smuggling. If you're concerned about those things, you don't want to be pushing the supply of all of this mineral demand into countries that can't enforce responsible principles, right? You should want it close to home so you can drive past that mine and see exactly what's going on, or show up at your town council meeting, make your opinion known, right? You should want to be able to actively participate in what's going on so you can make sure it's being done at the highest levels.
Yeah, it happens with other industries, right? You look at clothing, fashion, and apparel, right? The supply chain really gets looked at very
Yeah.
closely.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of supply chain audits and making sure tier one suppliers especially are doing things right. And then it's really getting down in like Patagonia, for example, they're amazing that way, that they
Hmm.
make sure all of the product is sourced from good practices, right? That for some
Yeah.
reason in mining, uh, it doesn't really seem to happen as well. So that supply chain needs to be really, really make sure it's just clean, because I mean, how many people have died? I don't know if you saw the video on LinkedIn not long ago, but the collapsing mine in DRC and literally
Mm.
trying to get people out. I mean, it's a daily occurrence almost. It's
Right.
just it's just sad.
Yeah, and I think that's where one thing I'm really encouraged by, I'm sure it'll be disruptive in many ways, but starting to see big manufacturing companies begin to vertically integrate, like the auto manufacturers focusing
Yeah,
on battery minerals in particular, but also starting to look outside of that at things like copper and things that folks wouldn't necessarily expect. I think that's really important because even if they're just investing in the companies that are going to be bringing those assets online, I think having that larger supply chain and business perspective on, yeah, like if you're buying a vehicle and you want to know where the lithium came from that went into that battery, or maybe you don't really care, you don't really want to know,
yeah,
but you're buying an electric vehicle because you care about carbon footprint in general, that should make you feel good to know that that company's done the diligence to know where the raw materials come from.
yeah. And I think we're making some progress, right? I think even the current administration is understanding, at least talking the talk, right? And people are starting to understand with this big move to electrification of just about everything. It's
Mhm.
starting to happen, but we just need to accelerate the message somehow, some way. I don't know. But I'm confident, we've, the human race has come a long ways and we keep advancing, and we'll figure it out. It's just going to take a concerted effort.
And well, on that, kind of looking towards the future and in what you all are doing every day, what's some new cool stuff that you see going on? Some innovation or stuff that folks are playing around with to really change how the industry works or how your clients are doing things. Is there anything really neat going on?
As far as what we're doing, one of the funnest things we do is it's really cool because we do have a good field team that is just
Mhm.
adventure, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things out here in the West is there's a lot of old existing mine workings
Mm.
that still have a lot of potential, right? To be opened up. I mean, back in the day, we didn't have the technologies we do now. So one of the things we're doing now is helping companies and exploration companies design drill programs. What we do is we have a handheld LiDAR scan,
Mhm.
and we take that underground and map out all the underground workings, and we'll lay out arrow points on the surface, and
Mm.
we'll fly that with the drone. And so
Yeah.
we tie it all together, and what we end up with is a really great 3D model of the surface and underground workings, and you can really, build an exploration program from there. So that's cool. That's a lot of fun, and just watching the guys just like build it and stuff, and they get so excited. It's fun. It's fun, and that's what this industry is. And there's a lot of great people, and it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun transitioning something from what Mother Nature has given us into the things we rely on a day-to-day basis. It's a blast.
Yeah. I'm always like, just imagine like how many thousands of years ago, I guess it would have been that somebody picked up a rock and figured out if they like melted it down and did all
Yeah,
these other things that they would get this shiny stuff. It's like it's just amazing, really, when you think back on how far it's come and what people are coming up with now. I mean, I know that there's a lot of sensitivity around, kind of the more future stuff like, deep sea mining, space mining. But when you look at the science that and the engineering innovation that goes into working through those problem sets, right? And how even just that we might apply to more typical mining and what tools we might be using. I mean, who would have thought really like 20 years ago that you'd be able to do a handheld LiDAR scan, right? Of an
Right.
it was military technology, right?
Yeah.
LiDAR and stuff was incredibly expensive and hard to use, and drones, now how ubiquitous they are in the industry and how many ways we use it. So it's really fun for me to think about what we're learning now that in 5 to 10 years we won't even kind of have thought about what kind of stuff we'll be doing.
Wow, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And I mean, we're really just at the very, cusp of what AI is going to do.
Yeah.
It blows my mind to even think about where
Mhm.
we are today with the new tools, right? Where are we going? It's exciting and frightening and exhilarating, everything all at once. And
Yeah.
it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, we deal, of course, at Prospector, we call human-centered AI, right?
Yeah.
Build human-centered AI tools. And what we love to focus on is getting people from data to decisions faster with AI, which even in that space, even not looking in the predictive end of things or, chat GPT and all these things, it's
Yeah.
just amazing how much more ground you can cover, pun intended, with
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
tools and how much more accurate you can be, right? I mean, I think that's the other part is you can really start to assess risk so much better
Yep.
and develop much better plans with this kind of technology because you could just incorporate so much more data.
That's right. That's right. And I still need to spend some more time with Prospector. I'm so intrigued. It looks like the most amazing tool, right? And
That wasn't yeah, not a product plug on the podcast, but
no,
yeah.
no, no, but it's not a product plug. It's just cool. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like we were talking about, right? It's cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's where, again, as we evolve as an industry and as people identify challenges, like that's the other thing that I think is great about getting out into communities and talking with people outside of mining. Because one thing I'm always asking is like, how can we take a Tesla investor and make them a lithium or a copper investor, right? What
Mhm.
is it that stops somebody from buying into the junior mining space, right? Or the mining space at all, investing in that the same way they invest in other high tech industries that maybe they don't understand all the details of, but they see
Yeah.
a lot of value in. And I think it's when we talk to folks like that and we hear what their concerns or their issues are, that's how we know what we have to do next,
Right.
right? And
Right.
it's, what are the tools? What's the data? What's the communication that we can do to make what we're doing better?
And yeah, it's a good question. It's just spot on. It's spot on. I mean, how do we do it? And I'll go back to again. We need to do it together, right? It
Yeah.
just happened together. Everybody that has any interest in metals and automobiles and you know whatever it might be, we just need to come together and make the story. And that goes back to the bigger mining companies as well that try to have always tried to keep such a low profile. Let's talk. Let's do it together.
Yeah, I think we can cheers to that. We can tell them to pick up the phone and give us a call or shoot us a LinkedIn, right?
Right. Right. We're here. We want to tell
Ex-
the story and help you. So let's do it together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I think that's a great point to end on, and really appreciate you coming on the rocks and encourage everybody to go check out Mineralocity. And yeah, we'll look
Yeah.
forward to hear more about what you guys are up to.
Well, thanks for having me, and I look forward to catching up with you again in some country somewhere along the way.
World.
That's right. All right.
All
Thanks, Emily. Really
right.
appreciate it.